Well, my body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. Ooh, my body lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my body to me.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Scott Arizala Show. My name is Travis Allison from camphacker.tv. I'm thrilled to be here today and super pleased to introduce my co-host, Scott Arizala.
Hey Travis, thanks a lot. So we wanted to talk a little bit about supervising young leaders in this episode. The reality is that I feel like we've just done this group a real disservice. It's not anybody's fault. It's I've done it. It happened to me. It's going to happen, kind of forever because this is how we do it. At camp, a lot of times what happens is, you are so good with a group of kids that we decide you should be elevated and be with a group of adults instead. You should supervise adults. Sometimes there's like a middle ground. You're a middle manager where you're still kind of in charge of kids, but you're also in charge of staff. And the way we recognize these people is because they have so many sort of raw leadership skills that we've seen with kids and with their peers that we elevate them. And a lot of us caught on to this really early. It happened to me when I was a young person, where I was just told, okay, this year you get to be the head counselor, and I didn't, know what that meant, and I was just told to do it, and so I just did what the person before me did. And that was what amounted to training, back in, the mid-90s when that happened to me. And we've smartened up to that a little bit, and so now most camps do this thing where it's like, oh, you're going to be a unit leader or whatever, you're a middle manager, and so we're going to bring you in, 24 hours before everybody else to get all kinds of great training before everyone comes, and we sit around and we talk about leadership and da-da-da, and then all of a sudden everyone's there, and great, go be a leader. And I still think, I'm still going to be critical of myself and all of us out there and say it's still just not good enough. I want us to think about what some camps do of teaching leadership to campers. Some camps have like a 4-year experience where it goes from being the last year of a camper all the way through being an 18 or 19-year-old senior counselor. And there's like these levels, these nuanced levels of leadership development for 4 or 5 years to get you to be a great leader. And then all of a sudden, at 21, we're like, great, you with 24 hours of training, you can be a great leader at camp. And I know we don't have the resources. I'm not being critical to say that there's like some bad reason we've done this. We're all in this boat together. So the idea is, what can we do? How can we do sort of more active, engaged supervision on the ground to help with the on-the-ground, on-the-job training that almost all of our young people, our young leaders, have to go through?
Well, is there a way, Scott, that we can work with them one-on-one in a mentoring relationship to get them comfortable with it and get them started?
Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing. In fact, mentoring our young leaders is something that I'm taking a whole new sort of fresh approach on at my camp, and I think everyone needs to do the same. At my camp, I just described actually exactly what my camp has been like. We spent all this time working on our campers and developing their leadership, and we literally turn them over into unit leaders overnight and expect that in 24 or 48 hours of extra training, they're going to somehow be good at it. And then all of us directors, we sort of back out for the summer, and we're doing all of our little admin things, which are important, but we rarely spend time being an active or engaged mentor to these young people. And I think we need to reinsert ourselves. Not micromanage, there's a fine line, a nuanced line there, but what I want us to do is to be a good mentor. So, I'll just give you my camp's example. This coming summer, we are changing how we focus as far as the directors on our jobs. We are going to take the focus from all the administrivia and focus it on being mentors to the unit leaders. Now, at the end of summer of 2014, I may come back at everybody and be like, it was a terrible idea because we didn't get anything done. Maybe. But what I'm trying to say is that if we can focus our time and our attention on mentoring what we call unit leaders at my camp, which in my opinion the entire experience of camp sort of drives on their shoulders, right? If we can concentrate on making sure that they're really good at scheduling things, being organized, if they're really good at having their unit meetings and communicating really clearly with their staff, if they can be really good at managing some of the issues that are coming up with kids, some of the issues that come up between staff, then in my opinion, I think what's going to happen is a lot of the administrivia that we've been dealing with is going to melt away. We're going to be able to get things done because it's not like we're going to spend every minute of every day with these young people, but we're going to be able to be active mentors to them and really show them not only how we do things, but be there as a support and resource when they're out there trying to do things. Because by definition, folks watching this, the youth development and camp professionals out there, by definition, you're better at some of this stuff than your young leaders. So I want us to take that active role and mentor our young people along the way. The only thing I need to add about mentorship is it's a relationship, right? And so we have to, as directors, as leaders at our camp, we have to check our own kind of egos and personalities at the door. Because just because I'm the camp director, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be the best mentor for all 10 or 12 of my unit leaders. Right? I've got to count on my co-director, I got to count on my program director, I got to count on my camp coordinator to help me with these roles, and we've got to understand that each relationship is going to look a little different.
Well, thanks for that, Scott. That's helpful. One of the best lessons that I learned as a camp director, and it took me more years than it should have, is to delegate some responsibility to the people that work for me.
Yeah, and it's hard. Delegating is so hard because it's very easy to chop off all the busy work. And when I talk about delegating, I always talk about delegating real responsibilities because at the end of the day, people know it's busy work. Now you may have to. There's enough busy work for most of us camp directors that we have to sort of delegate some of it, right? We have to make sure that, that somebody is passing out all the garbage bags and whatever else is the busy work kind of stuff. But we also need to delegate real responsibility. And the advice that I always give to camp directors is this. One, understand that when you delegate something, you give it away. You're no longer responsible for how it happens. You're absolutely responsible, and you need to make that person accountable for getting it done, so for the result. But how it happens, you no longer have control over. And the sort of rule that I give folks about delegating is this. The more specific you have to be about how you want something done, the less I want you to actually delegate that responsibility. It's like an inverse relationship, right? The more specific you have to be, the less the less I want you to actually delegate that responsibility. I'll give you a good personal example of mine. I used to delegate, for a long time, I was in charge on opening day at resident camp. I was in charge of making sure all the luggage got to wherever it needed to go. Now, as the camp director, you can imagine there's lots more important things for me to be doing on opening day than standing at the back of the bus and making sure each piece of luggage that come off is labeled appropriately and going to the right spot, right? And then so I tried to delegate that. And for years, I was a crazy person at the end of every opening day because that one or two pieces of luggage were still lost. And there was some 12-year-old who still didn't have everything that they brought to camp. And that to me was like unacceptable. How can how can we not get the suitcase to the right space? It's just unacceptable. And I got crazier and crazier and crazier about it until finally it took actually a counselor, not a unit leader, not a director, a counselor of mine, some 19-year-old, to finally say to me, Scott, you should just do the luggage. If you're going to be all crazy and yell at everybody all the time, why don't you just do it? Then the only person you can be mad at is you. And that was like the moment of truth for me because it was like, yeah, you know what? I've tried to delegate this time and time again, and I was down to the point where I was like making like label packets for the person who was gonna, so they could label everything the color coordinated way that I wanted it to be labeled. I was just like, this is ridiculous. There's plenty of more important things I need to be doing, like talking to parents and whatever, but guess what? Parents can come to the back of the bus and talk to me there. I can, you know what I mean? Like, there's not a reason why I couldn't do it. So I took that away, and that's what I mean by what you need to do as a leader to delegate responsibility, but that's also what I mean by real responsibility. We have to see the actual consequences that are important to this task.
You talk about parents coming to see you. I think that's the same with your staff coming to see you. You need to be able to say, yes, I'm busy, but I'm stopping what I'm doing so that you have my attention.
Exactly. So, we have to not only role model for young supervisors, but we have to give them the skills to really be accessible and approachable, right? So role modeling, that means exactly what you just said, Travis. When you come to me, I'm going to either make time for you, or I'm gonna say, hey, I'm doing this thing right now, can I circle back around? And then, of course, the hardest part about that is remembering to circle back around and come and check back in with them. But we need to be accessible to them. They need to know where we are. They need to know how to find us. Like, some of us have radios at camp, or, I saw one camp director who on his door had this big dial of like, where's Scott? And he always would, point to the, wherever he's going next or whatever. You need to be accessible. That not only means physically, but that means sort of emotionally. You need to be able to be somebody that they can kind of check in with. And then, related to that idea is approachable. You need to, people need to feel good about coming to talk to you. And there's a whole physical thing, it's like how you look when they talk to you. It's about not looking at your watch when they're talking to you. It's about putting your clipboard down. It's about coming around, your desk and actually interfacing with the person. It's about how you react to things. I mean, there's so much in approachability that I want you to role model, but I also want to spend some time teaching our young supervisors how to do that for their staff. How do they make themselves available? How do they make sure that they're approachable and that they're not freaking out about things? How do they make sure that they're accessible to their staff so that their staff can find them? Because by definition, a lot of young supervisors need to be in a lot of different places. So approachability and accessibility is hugely important to our young staff.
And how do you teach those young staff, Scott, to give good feedback?
So feedback is tricky. I don't think it's hard. It's not, okay, so let's start with what's not hard about feedback. It's not hard to identify things that people do really well, and it's not hard to identify where people are really messing up. Period. It's just not actually that hard. It's not hard for young supervisors to do. It's not hard for us to do. Occasionally it's hard when you have one of those amazing 100%, staff people. Sometimes we got to get creative with the things that are, challenging them, because we're like, this person's a rock star. Nothing challenges them, right? So sometimes that can be a bit hard. But outside of that incident, it's not actually that hard to identify things. What's harder, I think, is to deliver the feedback. And one of the reasons why I think that's so hard is because we haven't necessarily been honest with ourselves about what feedback really is. When you're giving somebody critical feedback, I want to be very clear about something. You're hurting their feelings. I just want to be honest about it. You're hurting their feelings. And when I say it like that, a lot of people react pretty hardcore to me and say, no, I'm not. I'm really gentle about it, and we depersonalize it and all that. And yeah, absolutely, you can be amazing at delivering it soft and gently and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what you're saying when you're giving somebody critical feedback is you're saying to them that what you meant to do, you didn't do, right? You did something wrong. And at the end of the day, no matter how much skills we have or experience we have at saying stuff like, you know what, thank you so much, I appreciate you giving me open and honest and direct feedback and blah, blah, blah. There's some part of our ego deep inside of us that we have hurt feelings about. It doesn't feel good to be told you didn't do something well, right? So I think we have to start there, especially with young supervisors, to understand that that's what's happening in critical feedback. And so what are the things that we can do to sort of mitigate the sort of negative consequences to having hurt feelings, right? And I'm not saying candy coat it. I'm not saying, I don't like the praise sandwich approach to critical feedback. Oh, you do this well. This kind of sucks. And, you do this well too, right? I want you to be clear and open and honest and say, hey, this thing didn't go so well. Let's talk about why. But I also want us to do things that sort of mitigate some of that negative feeling. One, recognize it. Look, I know you didn't mean to do it. I know you didn't wake up saying, hey, I'm going to mess everything up today, right? So sort of recognize that, yeah, the intention was right. Just what happened was not so good, right? And so, that's one way you can kind of mitigate those negative consequences. And then you can also come at it in this supportive, resourceful kind of way and say, well, here's what I think we could do to sort of increase the opportunities to make a better choice this time, right? To increase the more positive outcomes. What do you think? And have that approach as opposed to just like, that's not okay, that's not what should be going on. I want you to approach it the same way we'd approach kids. What do you think? Like, I've got some ideas. What do you think we could do better next time? And in that way, I think you're sort of, you're helping to sort of save face and kind of get on to the next thing. And that's the last piece I always talk to young supervisors about, is to not ruminate on things. I mean, unless we're talking about a huge safety issue or something that's like black and white policy that's like against the policy or whatever, there's no reason to sort of come back around, right? Like, say what you need to say, put some ideas in place, follow up when you decide you're going to follow up and say, hey, I'm going to check in with you at dinner about this or tomorrow about this. But there's no reason for us to sort of ruminate on it. And let's not do what, every bad relationship anybody has ever been in, what your then or your ex-significant other used to do, which is like bring up all the old stuff all the time. Like, now there's this new thing that I'm talking to you about, and by the way, last week when you did that other thing, that's still pissing me off. There's no reason to sort of bring up the old stuff, right? If it's something that we've talked about and we've moved on, we've talked about it and moved on, and let's leave it where it is.
Those are some great suggestions for supervising our young leaders. Thank you very much, Scott. For those of you watching on YouTube, please click subscribe, and we'll give you the rest of the shows will come to you. You get notified when you subscribe there. My name is Travis Allison from camphacker.tv. I turn it over to Scott to say goodbye.
Yes, thanks for watching, everybody. We really appreciate it. My name is Scott Arizala. You can check out more about what I do at my website, which is thecampcounselor.com. I've also launched a brand new staff training resource and membership service called the Camp Counselor Insider. Please check that out at campcounselor.com/insider. And there you can actually find MP3s of our entire first season of the Scott Arizala Show. So check that out. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next summer.
Well, my body